After 2020 went by with no new big Sonic content in sight, I wonder why. Fans were feeling what they kept referring to as a drought. Whether or not this was actually a drought is a topic for another time, but either way, it made the announcement of Sonic Central, no, not that one, the other one, all the more hype. Because until now, us fans have been relying on nothing but Sonic Rift leaks to provide us with any sort of quote-unquote news on what this new Sonic game that Iizuka teased in 2019 could be. This was, hopefully, about to be a big change. And it was. Kind of. At the very end of the presentation, Ivo G and Takashi Iizuka faked us out by pretending to end the stream, then giving us a short CG teaser of what was to be the big new Sonic game. No name was given for this new game, only a short clip of Sonic running through a forest with some kind of cybernetic boost effect following him, and then a cryptic symbol appeared, with the stream ending soon after. As someone who was actually present for the stream when it happened, I remember the hype. Oh boy, was the hype real. Despite the fact that this teaser showed us basically nothing about whatever the new Sonic game was going to be, the entire chat was throwing a monster joyous fit, including me, admittedly. And now, all we could do for a long time was speculate. A 5th boost game? A 3rd storybook game? Even Sonic Adventure 3, perhaps? Metadata leaks, the word Rangers is all over it, the community throws Sonic Rangers at Google over and over and finds a 4chan post from early 2021. The post described an open-world Sonic game called Sonic Rangers that takes a lot of inspiration from The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. In it, a lot of core elements and mechanics were described, and this only raised the hype. So technically, this was the big change where we get a lot of news on the new game we've been looking for, just not the way we expected. For the next several months, we continue to rely on just leaks to provide information on whatever this Sonic Rangers title was going to be, until one day, Twitter actually came to the rescue with an official tease that had to do with the game. A day before the Game Awards 2021 aired, Jeff Keighley just casually dropped on Twitter that the next Sonic the Hedgehog game would be shown at the event. The tweet was mostly about the trailer for the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 movie, which had been announced some months prior and set to release in April 2022, getting shown at the event. But this other part of the tweet also gained a lot of attention in the community. Twitter, if you implode, we shall forever remember you fondly as the platform that let us know that Sonic was going to be at the Game Awards a day early. Nah, I'm just kidding. Die and fire, Twitter. Oh wait, no, that would mean the end of Sonic Games Twitter too. Well, they'll just evacuate to the Discord, it'll be fine. Anyway, the full tweet reads, "Tomorrow night, Sonic's 30th anniversary gets even bigger. See the next game and we're excited to welcome Jim Carrey and @RejectedJokes, which is Ben Schwartz's Twitter account, to the Game Awards to world premiere Sonic Movie 2. Keighley made no mistake. Hours after the second Sonic movie trailer was shown, the announcement trailer for the new Sonic game was shown, now called Sonic Frontiers, a name that would stay in place when the game eventually released. The tease showed no gameplay, but confirmed the open world aspect of the game and showed the game's logo. Wait, what the heck? I have to be honest here. After months of fan-made logos for both game titles, this was somewhat underwhelming. I even made 2 logos of my own, both for Sonic Rangers. The first one... oh jeez, I hate this thing. I can barely look at it now, it's so ugly. I got everything wrong here. The inverted shine thing just looks dumb. The Rangers text is too big. I didn't do very well on the cybernetic effects. I just hate it. So, I would give it another shot some months later, and despite the obvious fact that I've ripped the Sonic text from the Generations logo, I actually like this one quite a bit. I actually tried to fool some people on a YouTube comment thread into believing a leak that I had made with this logo in a title screen mock-up. Obviously they weren't impressed, but in my defense, I made a decent title screen, so that was fun. Eventually, they would make the logo a little more detailed and interesting, with very visually appealing simplicity, but not so simple that it's boring like the original logo, so that was a relief. And 11 months after the initial tease at the Game Awards, Sonic Frontiers was released to the public on November 8th, 2022 to mostly positive reviews. But that brings up the question of the topic of this video. The original 4chan Sonic Rangers leak, which was one of, if not the only trustable leak out there prior to the official reveal of the game. The leak describes the game as being big, empty, and boring, when in the final game, there's a lot to do and interact with. So today, we're gonna do something that nobody's done in almost 2 years. We're gonna go over this leak and compare it to the final game to see what Sega improved based on this supposed focus test. I know, I should be uploading a full review of the game, I know, but here's the thing. I don't feel like it right now. So to make up for it, here's a funny mishap that I ran into while playing. There were a lot of comments on the video I made of Sky Sanctuary Cyberspace that talked about how I left out, how like the Sega people left out this best part of the song. I feel like my redemption would be to record some footage of this cyberspace. What the heck just happened? That was not my fault. What just happened? You all saw that, right? You all saw me yeet into non-existence just there? See? Humor! Now let's start at the beginning. Oh, yeah, right. First things first. The timing of this video. I know I'm a few weeks late and I still don't have a proper Sonic Frontiers review uploaded yet, but I'm very bored and have ADHD, alright? Do you really think I have the attention span to write a script? Did a focus test for a new Sonic game called Sonic Rangers, which is an open-world adventure game which takes heavy inspiration from Breath of the Wild. Did 2 demos, a 20-minute long exploration of the open world, and a final boss battle. Obviously, the name of the game has changed, so that's basically all I have to say about this part. The final game definitely takes a lot of obvious inspiration from Breath of the Wild, which is most apparent in a lot of the trailers, especially that one shown at the Game Awards. In fact, the first thing that my father, who's a huge Zelda fan and last year declared Breath of the Wild to be his favorite game of all time, pointed out upon seeing the Sonic Frontiers announcement trailers that they recreated the shot on the box art of Breath of the Wild in the trailer. Almost exactly. The music is very Breath of the Wild-ish, too. There's no way that they didn't know exactly what they were doing, aesthetics and music-wise, despite what Iizuka continues to claim. Anyway, the next few lines read, "Open world is populated with small enemies, puzzles, and platforming challenges. Completing puzzles, challenges, enemies rewards EXP which can be redeemed in a skill tree." All of this is mostly accurate to how the final game works so far, but there were some changes made. Only defeating enemies and bosses here rewards experience points in the final game. Instead, completing the puzzles rewards red seeds of power and/or blue seeds of defense, and completing the platforming challenges will occasionally reward you with memory tokens, the opportunity to perform tricks in the air, which therefore technically gives you more experience if you have it unlocked, or sometimes both. Now, I'd imagine that this leaker didn't immediately leave the focus test and get right on writing this leak, so there could be some details that they misremembered, but in the case that they have a photographic memory, this is a difference that I feel is worth mentioning. Skill tree unlocks abilities like the spin cycle, where when you hold Y, Sonic starts tracing a line behind him, and if you finish a circle, it attacks all enemies inside the circle. Not much to say here, this is exactly how the side loop works in the finished game, despite the fact that it's mostly designed for use against enemies with shields or some other advanced protective measure, or for activating and solving challenges, like the ones where you have to use it on the trees with the fireflies around them at night. The big difference, though, is, well, the name. At the time it was the spin cycle, instead of the ability that we all know as the side loop. Personally, I think they should have kept the name spin cycle, it just feels cooler to say. Spin cycle. Spin cycle. Spin-cycle. Spin-cycle. Yeah, you get the picture. Anyway, what the heck is a psi loop anyway? I know what a loop is, but you don't have to do a loop in order to perform the ability successfully. You can just draw a circle or whatever else your strange heart desires and it works just fine. And what's a psi? Cyber? That's not super obvious at all. It took me a good long while to realize what that was supposed to be. Also, it has nothing to do with the function of the ability besides the cool cybernetic effects that it has. It just sounds dumb. That's about all I have to say. What was I talking about again? Oh, right, on to the next couple points the leaker made. Lock-on attack returns. There are bosses spread throughout the open world, defeating them grants orbs. If you get enough orbs, you can go to a portal and go to cyberspace. This is similar to how the portal gear system works in the final game. Defeating bosses, among rare other occasions, will give you these gears, and these lead to cyberspace instead. I guess at some point they decided to change these orbs to portal gears, probably because these are way more interesting than some bland orbs. It is possible that they might have been repurposed into something else in the game though, as there are a few orb-like objects and projectiles throughout the game, but that's just speculation. Cyberspace levels are generation style and the music goes hard. That's 1000% correct, I will say no more! Beating them fast enough grants Chaos Emeralds. They changed this system quite a bit in the final game. It's not just as easy as beating cyberspace levels really fast to get emeralds in the final game. Instead, beating the levels grants vault keys, which in turn allow you to access the Chaos Emerald vaults once you get enough of them, instead of just getting the Chaos Emeralds. Now, the leaker said that beating them fast enough grants emeralds, so if I had to guess, I'd suppose that eventually turned into the cyberspace mission system where if you complete the level, beat it within a certain amount of time, collect all 5 red star rings, and finish with a certain amount of rings, where completing each individual mission will grant you a single vault key, you now earn 3 additional ones just for completing all the missions. Which, in my experience, almost always opened up Chaos Emerald vaults immediately, sometimes even more than one. Exploration and combat was super boring, very button mashy, but whatever. New voice acting by Roger, and no one else, was present, so they're definitely sticking to the general theme at least. The combat in Sonic Frontiers starts off and, yes, it is very button mashy, just kinda lock on, spam X or square, and occasionally dodge with the bumpers or R buttons, and you'll eventually win. But remember, this leaker did say that the demo that they played was only 20 minutes long. The combat in Sonic Frontiers gets increasingly more complex the more you level up and unlock new skills. The skill tree was mentioned in the leak, but like I said, this was only based off of a 20-minute demo, so there likely wasn't much time to unlock a lot of that variety to make the combat more detailed and interesting. Now for the final, I think, boss. After gathering all the emeralds, you can then cut through a thick fog you couldn't before in the open world. Gigantic tree robot thing is the boss. This is interesting. The first thing I want to note is that you have to cut through a waterfall to get through the first major supersonic boss in Frontiers, not a thick fog, but in their defense, the waterfall does look like a fog, so they could have gotten that wrong, especially if they hadn't added that line of dialogue where Sonic references Mystic Ruins in the final game yet. Either that, or it was a fog earlier on, and at some point they made the decision to reuse or redo the assets for that waterfall area in the final game. Another thing of note is how they described the boss, a large tree-like robot. Now again, I guess Giganto in the final game kind of looks like a tree. If you squint, maybe, I don't know. More likely that this was a large tree at some point and they changed it, because there is no tree being in the final game that you fight. Fly around it as Supersonic, utilizing Spin Cycle and other abilities, mainly mashing buttons. The fight against Giganto in the final game can feel very button-mashy a lot of the time.
But what think about that when you jam it undefeatable, baby?
And you can use the Psy-Loop in the fight, despite the fact that I didn't find it particularly useful. I guess I just didn't use it all that often for some reason. It's probably more useful than I think. Can take damage on a timer of rings. A ghost girl refills your ring count multiple times. Oh boy, here we go. The infamous ghost girl. Listen, I don't really want to do this today. Can we try this again some other time? No? Fine. Listen, just listen. There was so much confusion about what this meant when this leak first came out, and to be honest, there's still— Get to the point, loser! It wasn't La from Night of the Werehog, okay? I was right. Why would it be La? Why would this ghost lady from a promotional short show up again in a mainline title that has nothing to do with her or her home? I died inside for a good few days every time somebody said it was La, alright? There's no reason it would be. And those leaks, those leaks about the ghost girl being in a romantic relationship with Sonic. What madmen come up with this stuff? They left that in the dumpster after 06 for a reason. This is why I didn't want to talk about it, alright? I want to dismiss this forever. They might have even added a line in the game so we would know what's going on because of all this. So yeah, no mechanic like this is in the final game. In none of the main Titan bosses, nor during the final boss, which I'd show footage of, but you know. Like I said in that 9-paragraph copy pasta I just recited, Sonic actually mentioned Sage as the Ghost Girl. Obviously there's a chance that this is a coincidence, but it just feels too similar to ignore. And yeah, this line probably wasn't added in here after the term Ghost Girl got popular within the fanbase, but let's be honest here, it'd be way funnier if it was, so let's just pretend it was for the sake of the video. So Sage is the only character in this game even remotely resembling a ghost girl. I don't know what this means exactly. Obviously Sage is an antagonist in Sonic Frontiers, so I don't know why she would provide Sonic with rings during this fight. I can't think of a reason. Odd. Other than that, Supersonic is invincible in these fights and on a timer of rings, so that was kept for the final release. Demo ended after defeating the boss. Game is definitely early on in dev, but was rough. Not a fun time from what I played. Now, this is where the original 4chan post comes to an end. However, this anonymous leaker had a few more details to share, and they described them when they received comments on this leak about the things they had said. So, let's take a look-see, shall we? So, another Ask Creed clone? To which they said in response, no, it wasn't like a Ubisoft game. Think Breath of the Wild, but shrines are just puzzles around the map, not a separate building, and there's nothing to do. Also, I forgot to mention in the post that there are Korok ripoffs that are little rocks, and I'm surprised I forgot one because whenever you find them, they follow Sonic and make the most annoying little twinkling sound every time you ran. Wanted to— I am not saying that. You give them to this big rock guy at the top of a Ubisoft tower. There's only one though, it had grind rails. That first part, or at least the first half of the first part, sounds about right. Puzzles are scattered around the map, but I'm sure most of us already know that. I don't know what this demo looked like, but there are a good amount of platforming challenges and obstacles to overcome in the final game. This can lead to odd visuals, but no, this isn't a Sonic Frontiers review. We'll get to that. Anyway, about the Korok ripoffs, which obviously became the Coco, they changed the way that this system functions in the final game. I actually talked about this part when the Gamescom trailer came out, and— Oh, holy fudge, was that 2 months ago? Jeez. So yeah, here's what I had to say on that. Something that not enough people bring up is that the original Sonic Rangers leaker talked about how there were these little quote-unquote Korok ripoffs, which fits the description of the Coco, that make an annoying twinkling sound, kind of like the sound that they make when they're walking around in the trailer that we just got, every time you run when you approach them. This kind of makes me a bit anxious, because if they haven't removed that, then I have a feeling that that noise, which kind of fits the description of twinkling, is going to get old very fast once the game comes out. But mercifully, this is not how the system functions anymore. Instead of the Coco following you around and going, they instead, when you move away from them and reappear when you stop for a few seconds, probably in response to the probable complaints from these playtesters about this. Another thing that's different is that they talk about the Elder Coco here, and say that he's at the top of one of the towers found across the islands, which are in the final game and do indeed have grind rails. But in the final version, as far as I know at least, there is no Elder or Hermit Coco at the top of the tower on Kronos. Perhaps there was in that earlier version with the tower over there, where Rhea and Oranos Island were both part of Kronos. Spoilers, sorry. I'm a sucker for big, boring open-world games and Sonic. Do you think that I would enjoy this game? To which the leaker said in response, "It depends on what you're into, and obviously people's tastes are different, but the combat, puzzles, and platforming were all pretty uninteresting. From the demo, the sense of exploration was not there at all. Given that it was a focus test, however, they're testing the waters of what people think and they'll adjust around that. Looking back on it, it reminded me of that Mario in Real Life UE4 demo on YouTube. Think that, but Sonic, and no ray tracing. I have low expectations, but they have time to do something about it, though the actual idea for the game isn't fun both on paper and in execution. TLDR, wait for the official announcements. Lots can change from now till then. Nothing is final. Just accept it. No new game for 2021. Even Forces had 16 months of production time, and that game is considered rushed as..." To which the leaker replied, 100%. If this game came out in 2021, a bit further than the state I played it in, it would definitely be one of the worst Sonic games of all time. At least most Sonic games are fun. This is not. Well, good thing it got pushed back to this year then. And finally, one more person commented the following. "Into the trash it goes. I'm so tired of Sega catering to classic." To which the leaker responded, "That isn't necessarily true. It was a pretty short demo. Representative of the full game, yeah, but early and pretty limited. Definitely not confirmed either way." And that's it. That's all the main original Sonic Rangers leaker had to say about the game almost a year before its reveal, and nearly 2 years before it would actually be fully released. To be honest, I'm glad that Sega started development on this game as early as they did, and did all those focus tests, because that way they'll actually know how people feel about all their stupid decisions instead of just winging it and crossing their fingers. This leak describes a pretty different game than what we eventually ended up getting, and I think I'd much prefer the final version of Frontiers over this earlier build, based on the descriptions. I'm just glad that the game is good, and hopefully we'll get more games elaborating further on this open zone style of Sonic game and improving upon the formula. Cybershow was right, okay, bye!
Guys, trust me, the next Sonic game is definitely going to be great, and that's a Cybershell guaranteed. See, this is actually a win-win for me, because either the game is actually great and I look like a genius, or it sucks and that last part was just a great comedic moment.